call them vapors. Thermodynamically, they're the same thing.
So you mean to say gas and vapor, if they are below the critical temperature, they are same?
No, I think we just call them vapors when they are below the critical temperature, because they can be converted back to a liquid very easily.
So you mean to say that anything below the critical temperature is a vapor?
Not everything. That gas state that we generally call gas, that is, we call it vapor when it's below the critical temperature. For example, water vapor below 300 degrees Celsius or something, I think it's 300 degrees Celsius, something similar to that. Below that, we will call it above 100 degrees Celsius, and below 300 degrees Celsius, at 1 atmospheric pressure, we will call it a vapor, whereas above 300 degrees Celsius, we would call it a gas.
Anything related to critical pressure? Will it be always below the critical pressure or above the critical pressure? Any idea on that? Or vapor pressure?
Not sure about that.
Anybody else would like to comment or share your thoughts? Anik?
Yes, sir. I'm not very sure about that.
Anybody else? Saksham? No? Bhavna? Yeah, many are not there. So let me.
I just have a thought, but I'm not very sure about it.
Go ahead.
Gas is below the critical pressure.
So gas is below the critical pressure.
Sir, can we say that to convert vapor to a liquid, we just need to cool it down, and to convert a gas to a liquid, we need to compress it as well.
Say again. A lot of thoughts.
It's like I was just talking in the terms of conversion of gas and vapor to liquid, and to convert vapor to liquid, we just need to cool it down. And to convert a gas to liquid, we need to compress it as well.
Why do you need to compress it? You can also cool it down without compression gas, isn't it? Just by reducing the temperature. Liquid nitrogen, for example, you can liquefy nitrogen at normal pressure only.
Sir, like when we talk about,
yes,
like for example, when we say there's a nitrogen gas, so we don't say that, okay, like the atmosphere has nitrogen gas, but it is in equilibrium with some like nitrogen liquid. But when we talk about like water vapors, for example, we usually say that water vapor is in equilibrium with its liquid state. So maybe when we talk about vapors, we also need to have like a liquid in which it is in equilibrium with, something like that.
So can you extend this? You're possibly, I understand what you're trying to get. So can you just generalize your thoughts? That is one of the key points. I mean, there are two things. Let me just, also share my thoughts. There are two things. One is the issue related to the critical temperature, and another one is related to the what Soham is trying to highlight on the coexistence of liquid phase 2 along with the gaseous phase. So yes, Soham, so let me take your thoughts and extend it. So ideally vapor is a sort of a two-phase system where there is coexistence of a gas as well as a liquid phase. Okay, so vapor in itself, it is not appropriate to say a different thermodynamic state, I would put it that way, but instead it is a two-phase system where you have both the liquid and the vapor state existing simultaneously or together. And of course, since they are existing together, there is a equilibrium between them, right? So that is the reason why water vapor is a vapor and nitrogen is a gas. This is one reason. Second is about the point related to the critical temperature. So the gas has to exist, or gas has to exist above its critical temperature but below its critical pressure, right? If both of I mean if it is more than the critical temperature and the pressure beyond the critical pressure, then it will exist as a supercritical fluid, where it is very difficult to define whether it's exactly a gas or a supercritical stuff. But so it has to be below the critical pressure but above the critical temperature, right? That is another criteria for the gas, right? And that is the reason why I mean, where you cannot say, I mean, something which is above the critical temperatures cannot exist as a vapor. And this brings us to the first thought, that why is because something which is above the critical temperature cannot be liquefied just by applying pressure. So essentially that there is no possibility of having a liquid phase if it's above the critical temperature, right? So that is something we need to understand, and this is what how we can distinguish between a vapor and a gas. I would also encourage all of you to have a look into the phase diagram of carbon dioxide, and that is quite interesting, right? So if you look there and try to locate the critical temperatures or the triple points, then you will get more insight into when does carbon dioxide behaves as a vapor and when does it behaves as a gas. Okay, so let us come back to our original stuff on humidification. This is not a thermodynamics class anyway. So let us try to continue on from where we left in the last class, and let us take it forward from there. So let me share my screen so all of you can also see when I scribble something. Just a second. Okay. Yes, all of you can see my screen, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right. So in the last class, you recall, we described about how do we estimate or quantify humidity, how do we define percentage humidity, relative humidities, and all those terms, all those things. The couple of more important things to learn about related to this and get the key concept behind this. Another common or this important aspect is what we call humid volume. Right, so humid volume is generally defined as the volume of unit mass of dry air that contains a certain fraction, I mean that contains a certain fraction of the water vapor, right? So what is the volume of this unit mass of dry air containing a certain fraction or containing some water vapor at a given temperature and pressure, right? So this is how we define the humid, or theoretically what does it mean by the humid volume. Now to calculate the humid volume, you can easily understand that from its definition, this is generally denoted by VH. You can denote it any way as you want, right? So since it is a volume, I will define as the molecular weight of air divided by. So I am trying to convert this. Let me just write it down, then possibly it will give more sense, right? So this is the part which gives you the this molar volume at STP, not the molar volume, sorry, in terms of the, I mean, since we are multiplying with the Avogadro this volume 22.14 liters, and that will give you the volume of this humid air. So humid air contains, so this part is corresponding to the dry air, and this part corresponds to the this water vapor content in the humid air. And since this this Y bar is nothing but the ratio of the water vapor with respect to dry air, the entire, so this quantity, the entire quantity that we get is in terms of meter cube per kg of dry air, because everything is written, or we are trying to write in terms of dry air. Now, of course, this is at NTP or STP, and it has to be converted to the appropriate temperature. So it is the gas temperature or the atmospheric temperature that we are trying to convert this to. Right. So this is the humid volume that we generally write down given for a particular value of the humidity that is given by Y prime. Of course, this MW air is the molecular weight of air and MW is the molecular weight of water vapor. Right? Is this clear? The humid volume is clear. In the case of dry air, you just put this Y bar to be 0, right? And saturated by air, Y bar would be Y bar S. So this is the volume of the air along with the water vapor at a particular temperature and pressure. Is this clear with everyone? I suggest all of you to take your notes along with it, right? So that will be helpful and it will give you more, you will get more conversant with these terminologies and the idea behind it, apart from just looking into the screen. The second thing is the humid heat. So what is humid heat? So this is the heat energy required to raise the temperature of a unit mass of air, right? So when I say air, it means air along with the water vapor by 1 degree at a constant pressure, right? So this is very similar to the how you define the specific heat capacity of a material, that the amount of heat needed to raise the temperature of unit mass of that object by one degree. So same here. So it is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of a air or humid air by 1 degree, right, at constant pressure. So how do you write? So this is generally given by CH. So this contains two parts. One is for the dry air, that is 1.005, and another part is the part due to the water vapor, right? So this is kilojoules per kg of dry air. I hope all of you are getting what is this Y prime. Y prime is nothing but the absolute humidity. So it is the ratio of the water vapor, ratio of the mass of water vapor to the mass of dry air, right? So it is the fraction of the water vapor. So this is the heat capacity due to the water vapor part, and this is the heat capacity of the dry air. Right, of course, this is kg dry air, and of course per degree temperature unit has to be there. This is Kelvin, and this is kilojoules. Okay, so this is what we mean by humid heat. Another important thing is the enthalpy of this humid air. So how do we define the enthalpy? So it's again the heat content of this, vapor gas or whatever, this humid air in this context. And how do we define? So again, let us given this as H bar. So this is, first of all, you have to define this with respect to the humid heat or the specific heat capacity, CH. And of course, you need a reference temperature. Let us say T0 is the reference temperature and T0 is the gas or the temperature of the air. So this is the part of the, the sensible heat, and there will be one part due to the latent heat contribution of the water vapor, right? So let me just write, okay, lambda H and Y bar. Right, so this is the heat content due to the presence of the water vapor has to, that has came from the evaporation, right, or from the latent heat. So that latent heat contribution should also go into the enthalpy. And another part is due to the sensible heat following or relative to a particular reference temperature, and to that we multiply the humid heat capacity. Right, so if I just put the numbers, you know how it will look like. Just arithmetic stuff this is. And this is 2260, that is the latent heat of vaporization of water. Right, so this enthalpy is defined in terms of kilojoule per kg of dry air. This is kilojoule per kg of dry air. So is this clear to all of you? Yes, no? Is this clear, guys, or if there is any confusion on these three definitions? Mayank, are you there? Shalini, Nitin, Rahul. There are many Rahuls in this class, by the way. Anyone? No?
Yes, sir.
Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So what is your name?
Shashank.
Okay. So now let us proceed further, guys. You have to stop me if there is something that is concerning you or something which is not clear. Otherwise, this will become a monologue. Okay. So let us move ahead with the temperatures. So there are two temperature which is generally defined for this in the context of humidification operation, right? One is known as the dry bulb temperature, one is known as the wet bulb temperature. There is one more temperature, we'll talk about it in a minute, known as the adiabatic saturation temperature. But let us first understand what is this dry bulb and what is this wet bulb. So the dry bulb is actually the normal temperature of the air. Let us put it this way. It's the temperature of the air that is just measured as it is, right? Without I mean, just if you place a normal room thermometer, whatever the temperature that gives you is the dry bulb temperature, right? The only thing is that it should be while you're taking this measurement of the normal air temperature, this thermometer or this thermocouple probes should not be affected by any nearby heating sources or local heating sources or radiation or something like that, right? It should be freely and it should be free and it should be exposed to the ambient atmosphere. Achha, now coming to the wet bulb temperature. So the wet bulb temperature is a little bit tricky to understand. So let me first tell you how do you measure the wet bulb temperature. So if I have a wet cloth or a wet wick or whatever, this wet tissue, whatever, and I try to dry it out in my air, right? I try to dry it out. After some point of time, the temperature of this this moisture or water present in this dry cloth will not reduce. I hope all of you can understand that the temperature will continue to reduce due to the evaporation in that water film or this wet cloth, right? Why? Simply because due to evaporation, on evaporation it will take up the sensible heat from that wet cloth, right? So the wet cloth or the water temperature in this cloth or the wet wick will continue to decrease. So why this wet cloth and wet wick? Because you can put your thermometer in that wet wick, or you can cover that thermometer bulb with your wet wick or wet cloth, whatever, and that will give you the temperature of that wet liquid in that object. Otherwise, you can also think of this to be a a tray of water you place in your in your room or in your atmosphere, and you allow it to evaporate. So at some point of time the water temperature will reduce, but it will not reduce after some time, and it will attain a steady state temperature. So this temperature, this steady state temperature that you get of for your water or for your this wet cloth is known as the wet bulb temperature. Right? So as you can clearly understand that this value of the wet bulb temperature will always be lower than the air temperature. Isn't it? What do you think? Is it possible? Can both these temperatures are equal, or the wet bulb temperature is more than the dry bulb or the normal air temperature? What do you guys think? Adrija?
Yes, sir.
What do you think?
So I think the wet bulb temperature will be lower than the air temperature, dry bulb.
Okay, so is it possible to be equal?
Maybe depending on the humidity of the air.
No.
If
how does it depend on the humidity? I mean, you have to just elaborate. What do you think?
If the vapor content of the air is equal to how much moisture is there in the wick, maybe then.
So you're
Not
trying
sure.
to relate vapor pressure with the moisture content.
Like the temperature with the moisture content.
It is of course related to the humidity of the air, but just I'm trying to understand that how or under what circumstances these two temperatures would be equal.
I'm not very sure.
Vardhan, what do you think?
Yes, sir. Even I'm not so sure.
Anybody else?
Sir, if the relative humidity is 100%, then no more evaporation is possible. So maybe the wet bulb pump temperature will not be lower than the dry bulb temperature.
Exactly. So if the air is completely saturated, under that circumstances, the chemical potential of the air and the water film above the water surface will be equal. I have intentionally said it to be the chemical potential because in this case the chemical potential is nothing but the partial pressures. So the vapor, the water vapor pressure in air and the partial pressure of water, or let us say water vapor close to the surface of this water, liquid water, will be same. So there will not be any mass transfer due to evaporation, right? So if there is no mass transfer or there is no evaporation, then the water temperature will not change, right? And in that case, it will be same as the normal air temperature. It is not possible to have the wet bulb temperature higher than the dry bulb temperature, right? Okay, so let us try to explore this more. Think of a small liquid droplet. Right? Let us assume that liquid droplet is at a temperature TW, and let us consider a small film around it. So in this in this small film, essentially it is both the pressures as well as the temperatures and everything they change, sort of a boundary layer concept, like, or a film layer, I would say. So this is of course a gas film, or you can say vapor enriched gas film because of this liquid droplet. And far away from this you have the ambient air. So let us say the ambient air temperature is Tg. Its partial pressure is Pg. And the absolute humidity of the ambient air is Y bar. Right? So if I try to draw the temperature profiles, it would be something like this. So this is Tg and this is Tw. So as I say that if the air is unsaturated, then the temperature, there will be a temperature difference, right? And in that case, the temperature on the liquid surface, that is what exactly is the wet bulb temperature, right? Will be lower than the gas temperature. If it is completely saturated, this would be equal and there would be no temperature gradient. But in the case of unsaturated air, there will be a temperature gradient across this small film from the liquid surface to the ambient surroundings. And what about the partial pressures? So the partial pressure, let us say the partial pressure on the surface, partial pressure of the, this water on the surface of the liquid droplet, let us call it to be PW. PW, and far away pressure or the ambient pressure is already have defined PG. So this water, this pressure or the partial pressure of the water at the surface of the liquid droplet has to be higher than the ambient if the ambient is unsaturated, right? And only this case there will be mass transfer, right? So mass transfer happens due to the difference in the chemical potential, and difference in the chemical potential could be due to the difference in concentration, could be difference in pressure, could be difference in temperature, or any other quantity, right? So this is the gradient in the partial pressures. So why I'm trying to write both, I mean, this is a process which involves both heat transfer and mass transfer, right? So evaporation is a process where you have mass transfer as well as heat transfer. So what is the heat transfer bit? So there is heat transfer due to the, from the surrounding air to the liquid droplet, because the surrounding air temperature is higher than the liquid droplet. So this is the surrounding, I mean the heat transfer from the surrounding air or the heat flux that is coming from the surrounding air on the surface of the liquid droplet, because the liquid droplet temperature or the liquid, this liquid drop temperature is lower than the surrounding. So there will be heat transfer on that aspect. And of course, this heat transfer is balanced by the, at steady state, this will be balanced by the heat lost due to the evaporation. That is what ultimately we're going to do it, isn't it? To do that evaporative stuff, we have to calculate out what is the evaporation flux or what is the mass transfer flux. So the mass transfer flux NA is of course proportional to the difference in the partial pressures, right? And this proportionality constant is given by the mass transfer coefficient. Let us write it as Kg Pw minus Pg, where Pw is greater than equal to Pg, isn't it? Here also Tg is greater than equal to Tw, right? So this Qs, I mean this, now we can write that this heat balance Hg Tg minus Tw, right, would be equal to this. This is the mass transfer bit, and to that let us multiply the what do you call, latent heat of vaporization, and multiplied with the molecular weights. Right. So this is the heat, I mean, transfer due to the evaporation, and this is the heat transfer from the gas side to the liquid side, and this is the heat transfer associated with evaporation as the water gets evaporated from the liquid side to the gas side. Right, and this equality will exist at a steady state. Is this clear to everyone? Is there something which is not very clear? You can tell me now. Anyone? So some more algebraic steps. This is the partial pressure. I can always convert it in terms of the total pressure, right? PT, and I can write this as YW bar minus Y bar, right? And so this side would be the same, so TG minus TW. I also, let us say, I divide it by 8G. So now this multiplication of this, kg, ma, and pt, right? This can be written clubbed together. Let us say I make this as ky. Right? It's just sort of the modified version of the mass transfer coefficient. So you can always work out the units. So I can write this in terms of lambda h by. You will soon realize why why I'm so fascinated, or why I want to, recast this equation into this particular form. We'll just understand after some time. So Hg is the heat transfer coefficient and Ky is the mass transfer coefficient. Right, and this mass transfer coefficient is, of course, has the units. It is multiplied with the molecular weights as well as the total pressure. So Ky is, of course, dependent on the the total pressure in the system, or the atmospheric pressure. Okay, so this is how we try to work out the wet bulb temperature. Or this is the, I would say, the this physical side of how do you estimate the wet bulb temperature, provided the dry bulb temperature is known and the humidities are known. Can anyone tell me whether what is this YW prime? You see that I have written something as YW prime, right? From this from this PW. So that is the partial pressure of water at the liquid surface that I've written down. So I just tried to write down the humidity values corresponding to that partial pressure, and that I have mentioned as YW prime. So can you tell me what is this YW prime?
Sir, maybe it is at the saturated level.
Exactly. Yeah. So this YW prime is nothing but the saturated, this humidity, because the droplet which is at the surface of the liquid, if you do not go into too much into the microscopic details and all of the surface phenomena, this liquid has the highest surface energy and will be the first to get evaporated. Right. So since this is at a steady state pressure, a steady state condition, so so before reaching that steady state, the liquid was continuously evaporating. Right. So if the liquid was continuously evaporating, the one that is on the surface of this liquid is most easy to get evaporated. And at that point of the contact, right, there's a theoretical fine line, I would say, like what exactly is the surface of evaporating droplet. Right, at that surface, this liquid will be, or this the stuff that is got evaporated will be at its close to its vapor pressure, or let us not say vapor pressure here, will be close to saturation. Right, and slowly from that point, as we move away, we come to the actual humidity. So the surface of the liquid droplet, as long it is continuously evaporating, would be saturated with the water vapor. So this humidity content at the surface of a evaporating droplet will be at the saturated level, or this is nothing but the saturated humidity. Okay. Okay. Since we are good with the wet bulb temperature, yes.
So why is it Y prime and not Y?
Why it is not?
Y prime and not Y, only Y.
No, we have made it with the molecular weight, no? We have multiplied with the molecular weight also.
Sir, is YW prime equal to 1 then?
Why? YW prime, if you recall, it's not. I mean, that has nothing to do with becoming the ratio becoming 1. Ratio becoming 1 means the amount of water vapor and the dry air are same. But that may not be the case.
Okay, sir.
Okay, isn't it? It's all how you define your Y prime. Only we are saying that it is the saturated condition or the state where the partial pressure of the water vapor is actually at its vapor pressure. And that is the reason why the air will be saturated at that point. Okay. So since we are okay, I mean, let us move forward. I also wanted to talk about the adiabatic saturation temperature today itself. So let us go ahead with the adiabatic saturation temperature. So what is the adiabatic saturation temperature? Think of an enclosed system, no open atmosphere. Okay, you are having an inlet of air and you are having an outlet of the air stream also, right? And you have a liquid here, right? So in this system here, the liquid that you see in this chamber will continuously get evaporated as long as the air is not saturated. Right. So at the inlet you are having unsaturated air, and the system or the flow rate of the air is maintained as such. At the outlet you get saturated air. And why it becomes saturated is because the liquid will get continuously evaporated as long as the air has the capacity to hold more moistures, right? So of course, as the air becomes more humidified and ultimately it becomes saturated at least as it leaves the temperature, right? The temperature will certainly change. Is it or is it not?
The temperature of air or liquid?
I'm talking about the liquid later on. For the air, it will definitely change or will not change? That is the question.
It will change.
It will change, right? It will increase or decrease. What do you think?
Decrease.
Decrease.
Okay. Now coming to the liquid part. In the liquid part, the liquid temperature is maintained at constant level. How it is possible? You continuously circulate, constant temperature liquid. So of course, due to evaporation, the liquid temperature will try to reduce. But if you have a continuous circulation of the liquid to make up for the lost amount due to evaporation, then if you introduce fresh feed or fresh liquid into this chamber, it is somewhat possible to maintain the liquid temperature. Also, otherwise you can also have a liquid heater or something to maintain a constant liquid temperature, but the easiest way is to have a circulating liquid, right? So continuously the liquid temperature is actually maintained at a constant level. So the liquid temperature, even though it will evaporate, is prone to reduce, but it is not allowed it is not allowed in this system. And to prevent that change in the liquid temperature, what you generally do is that you try to have a continuous feed of the liquid, so that the liquid temperature doesn't change and it is maintained at a constant value, right? The reason why I'm trying stressing on these points so much is because so that you can easily understand the difference between these two process, or the measurement process of the adiabatic saturation temperature and the wet bulb temperature. So this is a closed system, so there is no interaction or exchange with the surroundings. So let me also clarify that. In the case of the wet bulb temperature, there is a constant interaction, both heat transfer and mass transfer to the surroundings, but here there is no such interactions taking place. Okay, so this is a adiabatic unit in that sense. Since the air that is leaving this system is saturated, this unit, I mean, at the exit or close to the exit conditions, there is an equilibrium between the air and the liquid, right? So there is a equilibrium which exists between the air and the liquid, and that is the reason why there is no further evaporation. The air is completely saturated and it is in equilibrium with the liquid. So this is one of the examples where you can essentially say or highlight the difference between equilibrium and steady state. So in the case of the measurement of wet bulb, the system attains a steady state, but here it is attaining equilibrium. I will not go into this discussion that why this is equilibrium and not steady state, why that is steady state and not equilibrium, right? I think all of you are to some extent mature enough to distinguish that when do we say equilibrium or when does a process is steady state. Can equilibriums exist at steady state? Other way around, can we have a steady state of an equilibrium process? I will leave it these things to you to determine and further brainstorm into it. Now here what we try to trying to estimate the adiabatic saturation temperature, we want to do an enthalpy balance. So the enthalpy of the inlet air, I write this inlet as I to be CH TG minus, let us say I take the reference temperature as the adiabatic saturation temperature instead of any just arbitrary reference. I choose the reference temperature to be the adiabatic temperature, which is essentially the exit temperature, right? And it will have this this enthalpy, the heat of vaporization due to the humid content of the inlet air. So this Y prime is nothing but the value at the inlet or the humidity at the inlet. And what about the exit air? Enthalpy of the exit here. Since the reference temperature is chosen at the adiabatic saturation temperature, which is nothing but the temperature of the outlet air, so the part due to the sensible heat will be 0, right? For the exit, it will only have the the heat of vaporization due to the saturated air. Made sense? So at equilibrium, since the system is in equilibrium, these two enthalpies has to be equal, right? So what do we get? Right? So all of you know that CH is nothing but the specific heat capacity or the humid heat of this air water vapor mixture. Right, and since the air that is leaving is completely saturated, I can easily write, or I should write, that humidity as Ys prime. Right, and lambda S is nothing but the latent heat of evaporation. So here we are not at all interested in what is the liquid temperature. The liquid temperature can be completely different. Right, here what we want to determine is try to balance the enthalpies of the inlet air and the outlet air. No interaction or no heat mass transfer process that we want to include from the liquid side. Right, because we are neither monitoring the liquid temperature, not we are interested in what is happening at the liquid here. Right, so this is a big or the striking difference in the idea of the wet bulb temperature. There it's all the liquid that we want to measure, the liquid temperature, the partial pressure on the liquid surface and all those things. But here we are just going to maintain are just going to work out the enthalpies at the inlet and the outlet. So you can think this to be a sort of a humidifier also, where we try to constantly humidify your air at using a constant temperature liquid. Right, and this entire system is adiabatic, so there is no heat or no thermal or mass interactions with the outside. Right, so now the question that or the thing that I want to highlight is when does these two types of temperature, the wet bulb temperature and the dry bulb temperature, will be equal? That is what I am trying to get to in formulating this type of relations. So for the wet bulb temperature, you have this kind of right, and for the adiabatic saturation temperature you get right, and we have in fact discussed that this quantity, this stuff is same as the saturated humidity of the air, is because this is the the based on the surface of the evaporating droplet. So this is the partial pressure based on the surface of the evaporating droplet, which will be at saturation. So this Y bar, YW prime and YS bar are theoretically same. So now these two will be same when you have this ratio Hg by Ky will be equal to Ch. If these two are same, isn't it? Then essentially this implies that your TW will be same as TAS. Right? So this quantity Hg by Ky Ch, this quantity is known as the Lewis number. So when this Lewis number approaches unity, it means the wet bulb temperature and the adiabatic saturation temperature are same. Okay. So we'll stop here today, and before we go to the next class, I want all of you to find out that how can you represent this Lewis number as a function of other non-dimensional numbers. So how is it possible to write Lewis number as a function of other non-dimensional numbers that you know of? Is it or is it not possible? If yes, then what it is? If not, then we leave it there only. And what is the value of the Lewis number for air, right? And let us say any other system. I mean air, by air I mean air plus water vapor system. And let us say air plus toluene system. So these are the two informations or two things that I would like to hear from you in the next class. That what would be the values of the air water vapor system and what would be the values for air toluene system. I mean the Lewis number. Okay, so we stop here today. We'll meet again on the next Tuesday or the coming Tuesday, and we'll continue from here. Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you, sir.
So if there are any things that you want to point out, please go ahead. No? Anyone? So if none, then we call it a day. Enjoy the evening and the rest and the weekend.